Jason X dragged a frozen slasher 400 years into 2045 and bombed with $16.9 million worldwide. Yet it quietly rewired horror's survival guide and now pulls millions of receipts hunters on YouTube. But here's what nobody's talking about. I'll separate canon from rumor, show why this so-called failure predicted the modern revival blueprint, and map the version that actually works on screen. So which kill made this movie legendary for you? Look, I spent way too many hours rewatching this thing at 2 a.m., and what I found changes how you see every horror sequel that came after. Before we dive in, let me set the ground rules so we don't end up arguing in the comments like Uber Jason versus regular Jason. Confirmed means it's literally on screen, in official commentary, or verified by the filmmakers. Likely means multiple sources align with clear patterns. Rumor means single-source chatter that sounds cool but lacks proof. Education and entertainment only, not insider advice. People call Jason X the worst Friday the 13th movie, but the numbers don't line up. It cost around $11 to $14 million to make. Sources conflict on the exact budget, but here's where it gets interesting. While it flopped theatrically, it became the most bootlegged film during its 18-month delay from completion to release. That's confirmed by multiple production reports. Now, here's the studio strategy timeline that explains everything. The movie was filmed in early 2000 under Mike DeLuca's green light at New Line Cinema. DeLuca believed Jason in Space could bridge the gap while Freddy vs. Jason remained stuck in development hell. But corporate politics killed the plan faster than Jason kills camp counselors. DeLuca got fired in early 2001, and the new studio executives took one look at a hockey-masked killer in space and shelved it immediately. For 18 months, Jason X sat in post-production limbo while New Line figured out what to do with their expensive mistake. But during that delay, something unprecedented happened. A workprint leaked online and spread through early file-sharing networks like wildfire. This wasn't a cam recording or a screener, it was an actual rough cut with temp music and unfinished effects. Fans were watching Jason murder people in zero gravity before the movie was even complete. That accidental viral marketing created something the studio never expected, a pre-sold cult audience that was already invested before opening weekend. When Jason X finally hit theaters in April 2002, it wasn't competing against other horror movies. It was competing with its own bootleg, shared for over a year. The theatrical release felt like an afterthought. Fans had already decided whether they loved it or hated it. The box office numbers reflected that weird dynamic. 6.6 million opening weekend, third place behind The Scorpion King, then a steep drop-off. But the real story was happening in the background, where DVD pre-orders were already climbing. Now here's the twist. That studio delay accidentally created the template for modern franchise survival. Pre-release buzz, viral sharing, cult audience building, and post-theatrical life becoming more important than opening weekend. Jason X didn't just predict the streaming era, it lived it before streaming existed. Receipts check. Here's what's solid right now. The 18-month delay is documented in trade reports. The budget range comes from Box Office Mojo and the numbers, and the liquid nitrogen timing was verified by SYFY's science team. The film opens in 2010, with Jason captured at Crystal Lake Research Facility. They can't kill him, so they decide to freeze him instead. Dr. Rowan argues this is a terrible idea, but corporate greed wins. That setup should feel familiar. Corporate interference leading to disaster became the template for every modern horror franchise. Jason breaks free during the cryo process, massacres the research team, and both he and Rowan end up frozen when the containment fails. Cut to 2455 AD. Earth is a wasteland. Humanity lives on Earth too, and a salvage crew finds both bodies perfectly preserved. But here's what nobody caught on first viewing. The movie doesn't just throw Jason into space for laughs, it creates new rules that actually make sense. In this future, Earth's climate has shifted so dramatically that only equatorial regions can support life. The salvage mission isn't random. They're specifically hunting for genetic material that can survive in harsh conditions. Jason becomes valuable, not as a killer, but as a specimen that survived impossible circumstances. That's genius world building, disguised as B-movie nonsense. The crew revives Rowan first using nanotechnology that can heal any wound in minutes. This isn't just sci-fi window dressing, it's Chekhov's gun. Those same nano-ants that save Rowan will later transform Jason into something far worse. Professor Lowe sees dollar signs and contacts Solaris Research Station to sell Jason as an attraction. Confirmed. The conversation happens at exactly 34 minutes in, and you can hear the greed in his voice. Jason Voorhees, he's like a brand name. Even in 2045, capitalism ruins everything. Meanwhile, Jason thaws and goes to work. His first kill is Adrian, and it's the one everyone remembers, the liquid nitrogen head freeze and shatter. CYFY Wire called it perhaps the coolest and most brutal kill in Voorhees' entire career. And they're not wrong, but here's the detail most people miss. Confirmed, the kill takes exactly 3.5 seconds of screen time. SYFY actually timed it and confirmed that's nowhere near long enough to freeze a human head solid. The movie knows it's ridiculous and doesn't care. That's the secret sauce. It commits to the absurdity instead of apologizing for it. You won't believe this part, but the liquid nitrogen scene was even featured on MythBusters. They tested whether you could actually freeze and shatter a head like that. Spoiler alert, you can't. But the fact that a slasher movie got the MythBusters treatment shows its cultural impact went way beyond horror fans. Here's where creator commentary reveals the real genius. Director James Isaac and writer Todd Farmer originally planned a much more serious psychological horror approach. Early drafts focused on the trauma of being frozen for centuries and the existential horror of waking up in an alien future. But during production, they realized they had something special when they leaned into the comedy instead of fighting it. Isaac came from a visual effects background and understood that practical effects could sell the most ridiculous concepts if executed with total commitment. The liquid nitrogen kill wasn't just a cool death, it was a statement of intent. Farmer confirmed in DVD commentary that they wanted one kill so memorable it would define the entire movie. They tested different approaches, but the head shatter had the perfect combination of visceral impact and dark humor. The KM fight sequence required similar commitment. Lisa Ryder trained for weeks to sell both the martial arts and the gunplay. The wire work and practical stunts cost a significant chunk of their budget. But Isaac knew the android versus slasher showdown had to feel real within the movie's absurd context. Even the holodeck sequence was carefully structured. Likely, Farmer has mentioned in interviews that the sleeping bag callback was designed to echo Friday the 13th Part 7 while also functioning as a legitimate tactical distraction. It's fan service that serves the plot instead of stopping it dead. Security Chief Brodsky mobilizes his soldiers to hunt Jason, but they're fighting the wrong war. They're using 25th century tactics against a 20th century monster who doesn't follow their rules. Jason picks them off one by one in increasingly creative ways. There's this brilliant fake-out where two soldiers are playing a VR combat game and Jason appears in their simulation. They think it's part of the game until Jason starts killing them for real. The line "game over" hits different when you realize the game was never the real threat. Before we move on, listen to this. The movie's R rating, 91-minute runtime, and April release slot created perfect conditions for cult discovery. It wasn't competing against summer blockbusters or award season prestige. It had room to breathe and find its audience organically through word of mouth and home video. The film's middle act is where it really finds its groove. Jason kills the pilot, causing the ship to crash through Solaris Station in a sequence that cost most of their VFX budget. The destruction looks cheap by today's standards, but it serves the story. They're cut off from help, trapped with a killer, and running out of options. Lowe tries to negotiate with Jason, offering him fame and fortune. It's pathetic and hilarious at the same time. Jason responds by finding his original machete and silencing Lowe permanently. Even in the future, some things never change. The group splits up to reach an escape pod, but panic sets in. Kinsa launches the shuttle early in her terror, crashing it into the main ship and making everything worse. It's a perfect example of how fear makes people stupid, even 400 years in the future. Then we get the movie's secret weapon, KM-14, the android played by Lisa Ryder. She gets upgraded with military hardware and goes full Terminator on Jason. The fight sequence is genuinely impressive. mixing martial arts with gunplay in ways that feel both futuristic and grounded. KM blasts Jason into the medical bay's healing unit, and for a moment it looks like she's won. The music swells, everyone celebrates, and you almost forget this is a Friday the 13th movie. Almost. But it gets worse. Those nano-ants that healed Rowan earlier activate automatically when they detect Jason's injuries. Instead of just healing him, they upgrade him. His damaged tissue gets replaced with metallic components, his mask becomes chrome, and his eyes glow red. Uber Jason is born at the 1 hour mark. The transformation lands and it changes everything. Regular Jason was dangerous but predictable. Uber Jason is a learning machine with supernatural strength and tactical intelligence. KM's bullets bounce off him like raindrops. Call it the survival blueprint. Self-aware escalation. Commit to the absurd. Upgrade the threat. Wink without apology. The movie just pulled a classic horror move, the false ending, followed by an even bigger threat. But it earns it because the upgrade makes logical sense within the established rules. The nano-ants don't know they're healing a killer. They just see damaged tissue and fix it. Be honest, did the nano upgrade make Jason scarier? Or did it kill the fear by making him too invincible? Uber Jason decapitates KM in one swift motion. And suddenly, the heroes are back to square one. Worse, actually, because now they're dealing with a cybernetic nightmare instead of just a regular undead psychopath. The ship splits in half during the chaos and Jason gets sucked into space. But he's not done. He punches through the hull of the rescue ship like it's made of paper, creating a breach that starts pulling everything out into the void. Janessa gets sucked into space in a scene that's both tragic and terrifying. The vacuum of space doesn't care about your survival instincts or your will to live, it just takes you. Now here's the part that elevates the whole movie, the holodeck sequence. To buy time, while Brodsky manually fixes the docking system, they trap Jason in a virtual reality simulation of Camp Crystal Lake, circa 1980. Two holographic camp counselors try to seduce Jason with offers of premarital sex and drugs. Jason, being Jason, responds by grabbing one girl in her sleeping bag and using her to beat the other one to death. It's a perfect callback to Friday the 13th Part 7 while also being completely ridiculous. The scene works on multiple levels. It's funny, it's nostalgic, and it shows that even in virtual reality, Jason's nature doesn't change. He's a force of nature, not a thinking being you can reason with. Brodsky gets the docking system working just as the simulation fails. In the final confrontation, he tackles Jason as they're both pulled into Earth 2's atmosphere. They burn up together like a shooting star, with Brodsky using Jason as a heat shield. It's a genuinely heroic moment in a movie full of absurdity. Brodsky doesn't survive, but he saves everyone else by making the ultimate sacrifice. The image of them falling together, burning in the atmosphere, is surprisingly beautiful. The movie ends with Jason's mask falling into a lake on Earth 2, suggesting he might have survived. It's the classic horror movie stinger, but it feels earned rather than obligatory. Here's where the cultural afterlife gets really interesting. When Dead Meat launched their Kill Count series on YouTube, Jason X became one of their most requested episodes. The original Kill Count video hit over 5.6 million views, but the recount version they did later pulled even bigger numbers. Here's why it matters. Dead Meat's audience isn't just horror fans, it's algorithm-driven discovery. People who never would have rented Jason X from Blockbuster were finding it through YouTube recommendations. The movie was getting a second life through clip culture and meme-ability. The liquid nitrogen kill became a standalone viral moment. Reaction videos, best horror kills compilations, and science breakdown videos all featured that 3.5-second sequence. It transcended the movie itself and became internet shorthand for ridiculous but awesome. Likely. The movie almost got a third life through the Friday the 13th video game. Uber Jason was planned as a playable character with unique abilities, but legal issues between the various rights holders killed the DLC before release. Fan demand was so high that modders created unofficial versions anyway. This pattern, theatrical failure, home video cult status, internet rediscovery, gaming crossover attempts, became the template for how failed franchises survive in the digital age. Jason X didn't just predict it, it lived it first. The MythBusters connection deserves special mention because it shows how the movie transcended genre boundaries. When a slasher film gets fact-checked by science educators, it's achieved a level of cultural penetration that most horror movies never reach. Even the movie's flaws became part of its charm. The cheap CGI, the over-the-top performances, the ridiculous premise, these weren't bugs, they were features. In an era where horror was trying to be respectable, Jason X said, "Screw respectability, let's have fun." Before the final recap, let me ask you this. Which moment sold you on the movie's weird genius? The liquid nitrogen kill or the sleeping bag callback? Receipts check. Where are we now? The 18-month delay is documented in trades. The SYFY timing confirms the 3.5-second LN2 beat. And the Uber Jason upgrade syncs with the nano rules we've already seen. Here's why Jason X actually works when it should have been a disaster. It codified survival via self-aware escalation. Commit to the absurd. Upgrade the threat, wink without apology. That blueprint became essential for modern franchise survival. The movie understands that horror franchises survive by evolving, not by repeating the same formula. The space setting isn't a gimmick. It's a way to explore what makes Jason scary in a completely new context. The movie also gets something that modern franchises often miss. It respects its audience's intelligence while never taking itself too seriously. The liquid nitrogen kill is ridiculous, but it's executed with such commitment that you can't help but admire it. Most importantly, Jason X predicted how horror would survive in the internet age. It became a cult classic, not despite its flaws, but because of them. The memes, the YouTube videos, the Reddit discussions, they all stem from the movie's willingness to be weird and memorable, rather than safe and forgettable. The film's anti-corporate message also hits differently now. In 2001, the idea of selling a killer as entertainment seemed far-fetched. Today, with true crime podcasts and serial killer documentaries everywhere, it feels prophetic. Critics gave it 19% on Rotten Tomatoes, but audiences were slightly kinder at 25%. More importantly, it found its real audience on home video and streaming, where context matters less than entertainment value. The movie made stars out of its practical effects team. The liquid nitrogen kill is still referenced in horror circles, and Uber Jason became iconic enough to almost appear in the Friday the 13th video game before legal issues killed it. Kane Hodder's performance as both regular and Uber Jason deserves special mention. This was his fourth and final time playing the character, and he brings real physicality to both versions. Regular Jason moves like a human predator. Uber Jason moves like a machine learning to hunt. The supporting cast, especially Lisa Ryder as KM, brings genuine commitment to roles that could have been throwaway. When KM gets upgraded for combat, Ryder sells both the humor and the badass factor without winking at the camera. Director James Isaac came from a visual effects background, and it shows in the film's creative kills and creature design. Even with budget constraints, every death feels unique and memorable. The movie's biggest achievement might be proving that horror franchises can reinvent themselves without losing their core identity. Jason in space sounds like a joke, but the execution makes it work. He's still the same unstoppable force, just in a different environment. Looking back, Jason X feels like a test run for the Marvel approach to franchises. Take your characters seriously, but don't be afraid to have fun with the premise. It's no coincidence that,